view in terms of, we got one more thing, some of these writers in these books will use Paul's words in 1 Corinthians against him in the sense of what was the Jesus that who was the Jesus that he saw? Was it a real physical Jesus? What kind of body did he have? Was this a vision? Was it a ghost? The words are spiritual body and physical body. Does that mean when he says that Jesus had a spiritual body, or we're going to have a spiritual body, the fact is we won't have a body, we're going to have some kind of a ghostly body? What do those words mean in the Greek?
Well, first of all, the tables have turned in just recent years. For the last few generations, I should say decades, the typical view has been that spiritual body is sort of a disembodied, albeit real appearance. And I would just say in passing, even on that older view, Hans Grass, Reginald Fuller, people like that, even on the old view, Jesus really appears. So I think that's very, very important, that the key fact is he appears. Now we're discussing the kind of body, but with these guys, resurrection is there. But now the recent trend is to see anastasis and agero and words like that as being bodily in nature. Now people point to Tom Wright's book, his 2003 book, The Resurrection of the Son of God, where Wright argues that these terms across the spectrum, in every source, he argues every source, he might be pushing that a little bit, but he says basically every time the word is used, up until 200 AD, post-Christian, that these terms are used by pagans, Jews, and Christians alike to be an embodied existence. And as Craig said earlier, they saw ghosts, they knew of spirits, they knew of that. That's not the problem. The problem is they didn't use this word to describe that experience. So when Paul uses soma, and even sarx, flesh, when he uses soma, body, Paul's talking about a bodily appearance, and Tom Wright's all over that. But the point I want to make is Tom's book is the most detailed. 500 out of 700 pages argues this, that no matter who you're talking about, pagan, Jew, Christian, they all say the same thing. But I would argue that about 10 years before Tom Wright, 15 years before Tom Wright, the table's already turned. I did a count recently of people who've written from about 1990 to date, and about 75% of scholars today say that resurrection or something like it occurred. 75%. Of that 75% who say it occurred, 75 of the 75, in other words, 3 to 1, say it was a bodily appearance. Ted Peters had a book that was published by Erdman's a few years ago when 20 out of 20 scholars in his book that he edited said bodily resurrection. So I think we're coming to a time where we're noticing that. And I'll say real quickly, the higher critical community, and a lot of these guys are good critical scholars. Higher critical doesn't automatically mean horrible. But some of the critics who do not acknowledge this still acknowledge the meaning of the word anastasis. Garrett Ludeman says the key term here is that it's language of sight and that it's embodied sight. That's a key. And most recently, Jonathan Reed and John Dominic Crossan have both said they agree with Tom Wright. And Dom Crossan said in his 2003 article, he said, I had already been going there by the time Tom said this. And he juxtaposes Paul's visionary appearance in Acts with Paul's words in 1 Corinthians 15, he and Jonathan Reed in their book on the search for Paul. And they say, we're going to bracket the Lucan explanation as not being firsthand. Paul's is firsthand. He's an eyewitness, and so we're going to say these appearances were believed by Paul to be bodily. I think we've reached a new stage in this argument, and it's a language argument, and Craig's excellent on that. So,
push this thing in, Craig. I mean, you've said it a couple of times that the Jewish conception of resurrection, okay, didn't call for this ghostly kind of thing. It had to do with the body. The body, if it had wounds on it, had to come out of the grave with the wounds with it. Okay?
That's right. That's right. For Easter to be interpreted as resurrection, it had to be a bodily resurrection and not merely a phantom or something like that. And what Paul is trying to explain in 1 Corinthians 15 when he describes the resurrection body as a spiritual body is he's not trying to deny the bodyliness of it. What he's trying to explain is that it's not a mortal body. It's not a body like the body we currently have. It's not a body that's subject to corruption. And so he calls it a spiritual body to show that it's special, it's immortal, it's imperishable, it is a new creation. That's his point. He's not trying to say that, well, actually what I'm talking about is sort of a ghostly or a transparent body. And some people have misunderstood the point.